We're gonna make 2 15-second pieces a week no matter what. Even if we don't like the idea, if we don't think it's good, instead of waiting to be inspired, we're just gonna create an inspirational follow. And that's what we actually found to be true. So now, like, the Harry Potter video was one of those videos that, you know, in our writing room, it was just like, hey, we love Harry Potter. You know, it'd be fun is we could levitate with a mirror. Let's grab a skateboard and go shoot that this week.
This is Creative Disruption, the intersection where entertainment, data, and creativity meet. Here's your hosts, Ricky Ray Butler and Derral.
Welcome everybody back to the Creative Disruption podcast, where we talk about with people that are actually disrupting the industry and things that are actually making the industry change because it's a disruption. That's what the podcast is all about. And I'm joined by my co-host, Ricky Ray Butler. How you doing, Ricky?
I'm doing fantastic. How you doing, Derral?
Doing good. I like the hair. What's going on right now? I mean, it's pretty slick.
I put some product in my hair. I'm trying to be, very fashion forward.
Wait, you're always fashion forward.
Back here too.
Like there's the first time I remember going to your place and you shaved half your head. I'm like, dude, you only shaved half your head. You're like, dude, you're so out of style, man. You're stuck in the 80s.
Yeah, you're one person that's pretty shameless about fashion advice.
Hey, let me tell you, I can say this, that I always wear a black shirt. I pretty much wear the same type of black shirt. I buy
but it's the same black shirt every day.
No, it's like literally a 12-pack on Amazon that I bought.
Is it the same black shirt every day?
It used to be, but
be honest.
It used to be. I just get the 12-pack now, so I just have one per day and then just kind of go from there. But it's just so much easier.
That's actually very optimal. There's some logic behind that.
And I know with you with your Gucci slippers and all that other stuff. I mean, you're always just trending for sure. But I know that people watching this podcast could care less about this. They're more about talking about the creation market, entertainment. And I'm really excited for today's guest, because if there's ever a time in the world that exists for this creator, it is now. It's like, it is now. And I think the audience that's out there, especially this generation that's coming up, is meant to watch his content. Do you want to just kind of do a little intro for our guest?
Absolutely. No, we're very lucky to have Zach King. And so just a couple of thoughts on Zach. Zach is someone that's both an innovator and a pioneer in our industry. He's an OG, but also the most relevant creator, one of the most relevant creators of our time. He's the largest creator on TikTok that's male. And I think
like, I'm glad you had to clarify that.
And all the women that are above him. But something that I remember about Zach is, we remember early on as we were doing gaming projects, there were not a lot of people to work with when it came to live action. And I remember working with him early on with Ubisoft, then also later with Disney, and then also with toy companies. And it's very rare where you can find a creator that has content that's appealing to all demographics. And he's, I would say someone that's very data-driven, does a lot of testing. When Vine was a thing, he was one of the top creators on Vine, and that helped explode, his content and following on a bunch of other platforms as well. And so, super honored to have Zach King here with us. Zach, thank you so much for joining us.
Of course, thanks for having me. I remember that first project we did together. It's funny, that was probably, if not the first, one of the very first projects. I mean, that was probably 12 years ago. It was on YouTube, and it was one of the first sponsors that reached out with legitimate money. And back then it was like, probably in just like $1,000 or $2,000. But I remember that video we made because it turned into like this thing. I spent like 4 times the budget I was paid for, because I just was so excited to finally have the trust of a brand, like a brand that my parents would have heard of, somebody like a household name brand. And so it's kind of just the projects and work and the whole landscape of the internet and the kind of the way we do the industry as a creator has changed since, watching it over the last 12 years. It's been a fascinating ride. For sure. And I remember you geeking out, and I think you didn't have employees back then. You were collaborating with some of your college friends. I hired my sister. I hired some of my roommates, anyone on the floor. When I lived on a floor in a dorm at the time with probably like 40 or 50 other guys in this dorm hallway. And I remember running out of the room like, I got this Ubisoft project or whatever, and they were all like, we'll help you. It was like fun. It was like the whole demographic was right there on the floor.
No, yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it's awesome, and two, like I actually learned about you through Ricky, believe it or not. And he's like, hey, because we've been friends for quite some time. He goes, you got to check out this new creator Zach Ging, and I'm like, okay, I got to see his stuff. And when I actually watched the first video, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so relevant, so needed, so creative. And I've been following you ever since, and I've actually been able to see you evolve quite a bit, not only just as a content creator, but as a business as well. And as you're going from there, would you mind just taking a second, like why do you create content, and what does it mean to you as a businessman?
Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, I view myself as a filmmaker at heart. That's the main passion and goal of mine. Ever since I was a little kid, I fell in love with Spielberg movies and all the movies that really captured my generation of filmmakers. We looked up to all these directors and producers. And for me, like the fact that 24 frames a second and through a series of music and sound and dialogue could have such an emotional impact on you at whatever age you watched it, like that was exciting to me. I remember growing up going to, Blockbuster or a Hollywood Video, which are, I don't think they're around, but we'd rent movies on like Friday, Saturday night with my family and try to watch them in the one night before, getting the additional fees, the late fees the next day. So we'd watch them, and I'd rewatch those VHSs over and over. And I just fell in love with filmmaking. And so the fact that, fast forward to today, I've been able to grow my own platforms and distribute the content by the push of a button, it still kind of blows my mind every day that we have that distribution power, because it was just, 20 years ago that I'd have to go to a store, rent this thing, and now even just the landscape of YouTube is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. The fact that anyone can grab a camera and publish and have the potential to build an audience, that's so powerful. And so that's where I'm at with my journey today, and it's been just along the way figuring out the platforms and the different business models we need to help complement our passion, which is at the end of the day filmmaking, telling short form, and also eventually some longer form material as well.
Yeah, and I want to do a follow-up question because I think this is really important too. But out of the gate, I noticed something as soon as Ricky kind of introduced me to you and your videos and stuff like that. But even though that a lot of the stuff that you do is there's not a lot of verbal interaction, there's a lot of storytelling that's involved in it. Mm-hmm. And it's very thought out and it's very processed. Like the one that I even remember to this day, there's certain videos you just like kind of click with you. And it was the furniture one that you did a couple years ago or a year ago. I mean, that was by far one of the most beautiful storytelling videos that I've seen on the internet. Like it was that great because you didn't know what's going to happen next. And you totally led me through that journey. And then I always thought, okay, this is what it is. And then boom, juxtaposition and something else changes from that. So the follow-up question I have is, when did you start that process of realizing what your niche was and what your content actually is?
It took me a long time to figure out my voice as a creator. And I'm still figuring that out to this day, and it's a really fun process of just becoming an artist. But when I was in film school, I had first applied to film school, didn't get in, eventually just sat in the back of the classes. But it's during that time when I wasn't officially, enrolled as a student, I didn't have the homework. So I needed this output. Like I wanted my peers to be able to rate my work and see it, but I wasn't in the class officially, so I didn't get a chance to present. And so it turned over to YouTube. This is 2007, 2008 at the time. So I start posting my short film work on YouTube. And it's funny, like in terms of the landscape, it was like I was also posting on Vimeo, Dailymotion, I think even Yahoo Video, just to get it out there, get my work seen, and build a small community. And again, there was no AdSense. It wasn't like today where you might have a young creator thinking like, I'm going to go do this and turn this into a business. It wasn't that. It was just an outpouring of creativity and wanting others to see it and share it. And YouTube ended up being a front runner in that. And I was building a small community. I mean, it was maybe 20 or 30,000 subscribers on there. Again, no ad revenue, but it was just posting tutorials of saying, here's a short film I made, here's how I made it, here's literal tutorials, here's some cool plugins I found, here's plugins I made and developed, and I was just putting them out there on this small YouTube community. And over the years, really in the first year or two, I noticed the comments saying like, hey, we'd love to see more of the short film stuff. Like, we love the tutorials, but really, like, we want to see your narrative skills. And for me, that was a challenge. It was like, okay, they're not fully, they're liking the tutorials, but they're not fully entertained. Like, I do want to do that long term, so I need to figure out how to do that. And I started making these 2 to 3 minute short films that I would emphasize the tutorial aspect later. Maybe it was adding a lightsaber, like I did with the short film called Jedi Kittens. Right. And I just early on learned how to create short films that would capture, it was crazy. Back then, 1 million views was actually a lot. 2 million views was like super viral. It'd get you on the news back then. I think today it probably takes 20 or 30 million views to, hit the front page of Good Morning America now on broadcast. But it's like those videos were hitting that and making the news. And every Friday, the challenge was over the weekend on the side of my schoolwork. Could I make a short film that I released on Monday, and we hit the same thing? And over time, I didn't hit my voice, though. I was still just throwing stuff against the wall, splashes of different colors, seeing what mixed and what worked well. But really, the stride, when I hit my stride, it was actually on Vine. And I think a big part of that was on constraints. Vine, for those of you that remember, was 6 seconds, and it looped over and over on just your phone. And to me, that really challenged me when I signed up for that platform and made under the special effects category that they had. It really challenged me and gave me creative constraints. Like, one, the time limit is like 6 seconds. When I signed up, I was like, that's so easy. Like, I'm making these 5-minute YouTube videos that take me 2 months a piece by myself and with a friend. Like, heck, I can make 2 of these Vines a day. But it turned out, after I started making them, you realize quickly you could make them, but if they weren't hitting, it was like you still had to have this narrative structure of a story, the beginning, the middle, and end, and a great twist, and foreshadow that somehow in the first second, and like the joke had to land. All these little nuances you start picking up on, and that was my real training ground for finding my voice. So when young creators ask me now, like, hey, how do I quickly, maybe it's not quickly, but how do I find my voice and narrow down on that? My approach is do a similar training where you make 1 or 2 short pieces, like maybe it's 10 seconds, maybe it's 5. But giving yourself that constraint actually gives you more freedom in your creative process and forces you to iterate quicker. And so as we continue, my team and I, to build content, we still try to implement that Vine type of mentality. Like, how can we break this series quicker? How can we watch this series even sooner before putting it out and finding out it fell flat with the audience and we spent all this money on it? Like, how do we actually watch this thing earlier on? And so our goal is just constant iteration with the content. But I'd say in terms of when I started finding my stride on the voice, it was around that time, 2012, 2013, when I signed up for Vine.
That's amazing. I remember, even though we worked together before Vine existed, just finding you organically on Vine and thinking, whoa, this guy's flexing. This guy's taking graphics and Final Cut and everything, and like doing
Final
things
Cut
that other miners are not doing, and using After Effects and actually having storylines. And I remember that, like, how impressive that was, and that really was the platform where you just started to become way more mainstream, correct? Where you just exploded.
That's the platform where it switched, where, YouTube, maybe I think I had around 300, 400,000 subscribers, which was substantial. And they started rolling out the AdSense program, but really I was still only bringing in, I just looked this up the other day, $1,400 to $1,500 a month. So like $20-something a year, which was great for me as I just graduated college. And I was living in a house of 8 or 9 guys in the garage. Like I was fine, basically eating kind of the ramen startup style. But for me, all of a sudden after Vine came out, within 2 or 3 months, and I've never seen anything like it since, maybe until recently with TikTok, that I couldn't go out to get lunch anymore at Panera, without being stopped by 5, 6 people. So that's what changed, is the public recognition of it.
It's amazing what Vine did to this like creator economy and to this like ecosystem that we're in today. There's like the Vine evasion on YouTube, where like a lot of the top tier, high growth creators in the last, 5 to 10 years, a lot of them came from, Vine and migrating over. Now, being that it was so influential and looking back as a creator, what advice would have you given Vine in their relationship with the community that could have maybe potentially made them more competitive today, where they didn't have to shut the lights off. Is there anything that they could have done?
I wasn't in really deep with anyone over at Vine, so I can't really speak to.
So that's the
what
problem.
Their challenges were. But I think that to be said, when I look at it now, like I should have been tight with somebody there, and that's not necessarily the fault of them. But when I look at platforms today, they're focusing down and helping build those relationships as they should be with the creators and young and top tier creators. I think both need kind of that hotline or that help and that mentorship from some of the platforms. And so that's the big difference that since Vine, most platforms have kind of a community that helps the creators along the way, which.
Yeah, and I think, too, one of the biggest mistakes that Vine made and other platforms will make is if there's no incentive for creators. And when I mean incentive, it's like, how do you make money with this, right? Yeah, you can integrate a brand, you can do whatever, but how are you going to support creators making money? And I think that right now is like the more money that you're going to make, the more that you're going to invest into your company because you're a creator, you're going to create content, and that's the ecosystem from there. And then two, when you're able to get the satisfaction of creation, and then it also is building your business, you're going to be more apt to, have better performing content. And I think Vine was so great because of the attention span of the new viewer, right? And it's like every second is well thought out, right? Every second is really accounted for, and it leads to something. Where I can't say that on YouTube. I mean, there's some people, takes 20 minutes before they get to the point instead of getting right on target and really saying, okay, we have that controlled narrative. Let's go ahead and make sure that we get through this, because if not, they're never going to engage with it. We're never going to grow. We're never going to go from there. And so I'm very curious, though, because now you've been able to grow very, very quickly on TikTok, which I've been really excited about because I think TikTok's really a disruptive platform on multiple levels. But would you say that a lot of the stuff that you learned on Vine translated over to TikTok, or is there kind of things that you learned along the way that helped you better perform on TikTok?
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely did have something to do with it. What I always look for in a platform, and what intrigued me about TikTok back when it was, I was logged on, it was 2015, 2016 when it was still called Musical.ly. So it was 3 years, and I remember almost being weird that I was on the platform. Like, felt like, oh, this is strange because I'm almost interacting with a bunch of 16-year-olds posting these lip-syncing songs. But what was intriguing to me was, one, the community that felt like was building there, but also the fact that it was a new creative output. Like, people, of course, I remember being a young high schooler, and I wanted to like lip sync with my sisters, but there was no platform that merged it and all did it for us. We did it for fun because I knew how to edit in Final Cut Pro. And so for me, seeing that fact that music was being paired to it was a really intriguing part. And I was also watching, I don't know if it's around anymore, but Dub Smash at the time was also equally intriguing. And it was more, we weren't able to build like a following there, and it had other issues. But for me, TikTok, like, we always look at these platforms that just creatively kind of spark our imagination, and we can all of a sudden do a little bit more than we could before, and it gives us these other ideas. Like, there's just a different energy when you put music to your stuff, and that's what we thought. But absolutely, like, the storytelling is all still the same. And I think over the years, we're going to find, like, the long tail of this is really that the story is what matters. It's not, hacking the algorithms. I see so many things on the For You page that's like, okay, here's the number one way that you're going to get on. And like all these little shortcut and hacks or whatever, one, they're going to constantly change over the years based on an algorithm tweak. But I want to see hacks that are really helping the story, whether it's 15 seconds or 15 minutes or an hour and 15. Like, there's just good storytelling that needs to happen. And so that's what we focus on first when we're developing these things. It isn't even how do we, sure, we're thinking about what's the attention grabbing kind of frame, or what's the thing that gets their attention in 3 seconds. But usually, sometimes we throw those out the window completely if we feel like, no, the piece really works better if you gradually get into it and it works up, but we're laying all these fun story hints, and then it has this payoff. Like, for us, we're just trying to make stuff that we enjoy watching, even if it doesn't hit every checklist of, what the algorithm hack might be that month.
I think the biggest thing that I'm the most impressed with is a lot of people focus in on the first, few seconds, getting them into it. But I think you spend more time, and this is just an outside observer, of the last few seconds because they generally will watch it again. And as I say, it's like, man, I wondered why he cut off at this certain time and, did that. And I know because they're watching it again so they can get that payoff again because it ends pretty quick or however you're engaging with it. Could you kind of just take us through that process of like, and I mean, you don't have to go into super detail, but like of breaking up a TikTok video and where you put your emphasis and what you want them to do, like the general goal of it?
Yeah. Well, we kind of deliver on a promise. Like we're in the business of surprise. Like that's what my team does, whether we're making, our videos, an ad, or like some real life installation, like it's got to be surprising. And that thing that draws you in a little bit is the watermark of my face. I got the best advice years ago from Freddie Wong and Brandon Lash, who took me out to, and you guys would know, they took me out to lunch at this burrito place in LA, and we're like, hey, and this is back when I was behind the scenes, like, I was almost going to work for them behind the scenes. Like, and they were like, hey, what you're doing on YouTube is starting to work, but like put yourself in front of the camera. Stop being behind the camera because it'll just be a little watermark. And that was one of the best advice I got. And so now when we approach a TikTok video or any kind of video for that matter, we know my face is kind of the watermark that if anyone sees that, and they may have seen our stuff before, they'll remember that we delivered some sort of magical surprise or a fun story. So we want it to be like, okay, you recognize the Zach video, and now just pay attention. Like we're gonna deliver on this promise of like, okay, you're watching, you're giving us your 15, 20 seconds, but at the end we're gonna build up these fun elements that you almost should have known what the ending was gonna be. You should have known it was gonna happen, and it's that like, as a viewer, when you watch it, we want you to have the feeling of like, it was kind of right in front of me. Like he gave me all the hints, he gave me all the clues. It's like when a magician's doing a trick and they are, but we're having you look over here at the story element or something else while we're doing this over here. And it's that little bit of distraction, that sleight of hand, and it's kind of the digital sleight of hand now, and that's what but it's for us all story payoff. It has to be. It's not about how cool the visual trick is. Like that's awesome to have, and that's a big plus if we can make it more visual and have it be, maybe it's a cool stunt or maybe it's a cool explosion or whatever. But it doesn't always have to be that. It can also be really simple. It just comes down to the cohesiveness of the story. One thing we love to do, though, when you talk about watch time, is we do see a huge increased watch time when it does a perfect loop. And so that's where, we spend a lot of time in development just to wonder, like, okay, can we actually do something clever in the story and the camera framing and the camera work to loop it back to the beginning? And sometimes the viewers don't know they're watching the same thing. Like, they may think there's a different version, or sometimes we do deliver on that. And 3 loops in, we actually change it. So there's a lot of fun techniques to keep the audience guessing, but for us that's the goal. Like if we stop delivering on surprise, then that's when we're out of business.
Yeah, and that's one thing that you do really well. I know when I'm going to watch your videos of that sort is there's always going to be something that I know that I'm going to catch, but I don't catch it, and it's always that surprise and delight. But you literally end it very quickly that I have to watch it again. So you're getting a couple views out of me at least per video.
A couple views. Have you seen the Harry Potter illusion?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Zach?
Yeah,
so,
that
Zach,
was epic.
I believe that's the record-breaking highest viewed video on TikTok. Am I correct?
That's what I've heard. They just sent me a Guinness World Record plaque for it, actually, and so it's pretty wild. Like when that video came out, it broke TikTok's algorithm for how the view counter specifically, and like actually went reverse negative because it restarted counting from 0. It was weird.
Estimate around like 2.
The first video you go reverse negative in the
it
world
started
on TikTok.
Weird, I don't know. One of our programmers on the team was trying to explain it to me. He's like, when the counter, they didn't think a video would get this much, so like the counter broke basically.
Well, like how many views was it total? Did they ever figure that out? Was it over like 2 billion?
Yeah, something like 2 billion views, 2 point something.
So that to me is amazing, especially not to talk about brand deals specifically, but when you see that there's like sponsorships that are a couple million for less than 10 million views, like for example at the Oscars. I mean, nothing like this is happening in television today, anywhere. I mean, this is all happening on the social platforms, which is amazing. But so what happened to with the Zach King's Harry Potter illusion? Like, did you know it was going to be that big? What were your expectations, and then what was a little bit of the strategy?
Yeah, of course not. Of course, no one could predict that. For us, the strategy, years ago, after Vine took off, and this is pre-TikTok, I just signed up when it was called Musical.ly. I was going through this almost existential crisis, but I was sleeping terribly every night and wondering, like, are my best ideas gone? Like, I think I've literally we had made maybe 1,200 videos, which is a lot of videos. And I kept thinking, like, that's 1,200 really good ideas, and I'm kind of done. And what I started to do in my content strategy was, like, waiting for the muse to drop on me or one of the team members and come up with a new video idea. And sometimes that would lead to, like, these dry spells of, like, several weeks where I wouldn't post. I wasn't feeling inspired, right, creatively, so we wouldn't make anything. And I was shutting down all these great ideas because I was like, I always thought they had to up each other. We got in this rhythm of, like, well, we did a big stunt gag last time, like an explosion the time before. Now, what's bigger than that? We got to do some crazy set thing. But it stopped us and hindered us from making anything. So a few years ago, we decided, know what? We're going to actually make 2 videos a week, no matter what. These are the 15-second pieces. We're going to make 2 15-second pieces a week, no matter what. Even if we don't like the idea, if we don't think it's good, because we know having that goal will actually just be throwing stuff against the wall. And as creators, we thought, instead of waiting to be inspired, we're just going to create an inspirational follow. And that's what we actually found to be true. So now, like, the Harry Potter video was one of those videos that, in our writing room, it was just like, hey, we love Harry Potter. It'd be fun is we could levitate with a mirror. Let's grab a skateboard and go shoot that this week. So we went out and shot it, didn't overthink it. Wasn't one of our pieces that we went and, usually we go reshoot. It's almost like the animation process. We kind of do mock-ups until we get the real thing and rework it and go shoot. It's not uncommon now to reshoot a video 3 or 4 times just to get it right. But that one happened to be a one-off. We got it in like a couple takes, didn't think anything of it, rewrote the soundtrack to kind of be like a little parody of Harry Potter and put it out there. And yeah, it's just one of those pieces that you just don't expect.
So I got a question about that specific piece, but did you get a lot of duets on that? Because I think, I got some hypothesis, whatever, but I noticed that your content seems to get a lot of duets where people are reacting to your content. But did that have a higher than normal amount?
You know what? I've never, to be honest, I've never looked at the number of duets. I don't click the little album button. So I think, yeah, I mean, it probably does have a massive amount of duets. But I think the ones that we've seen people have, it's got to be a pretty big reveal in the video. And that allows, I noticed in the duets, them to have big facial reactions at the end, which kind of is a payoff to their audience. But I don't actually consume a lot of TikTok myself. Like people, we had a gal here we were collaborating with yesterday, and she was like, "How do I stitch a video?" And I was like,
"Talking to the wrong person."
I don't. Yeah, honestly, like I make them and I just upload them directly. I don't do any of the other special features anymore, so I don't know any of the hacks. But I imagine that one does. I'd be curious to know. Yeah, it probably does have a lot more duets.
Well, I saw like your escape artist one where you're spray painting the ladder and stuff like that. It had a ton of duets on it, so I would assume that the other one did as well. But I don't know. I think it's fascinating, and I love the culture. And I think when we did the introduction for you, like, I believe this is your time because the audience right now is meant to have an immediate payoff, the surprise and delight. And, that's kind of where you thrive as a content creator. I think that there's a lot of people that, make amazing long form content, but you're so careful with every little second, every little frame. And I think you put a lot more energy into it, and you validated that by, you have to do reshoots and reshoots to reshoots and all that stuff from there. But what I want to know from this perspective is, as you're developing as a creator, and you basically said, look, we don't need to one up, we just need to be consistent. How did that change your business dynamic, and then what did it create opportunity-wise for you?
Yeah, I mean, there was the simple. The biggest thing, I mean, around that time, 2016, you can actually see, and if you Google trend my name, you'll see the slump we were in. It goes down for a couple years because that's where we were maybe creating, it was as low as like 35 or 40 pieces a year. And so around that time, 2016, 17, we said, what's the thing that if we were doing in a year from now would probably have the biggest impact on our business? and the studio, and we said, well, it would be at least doubling from 40 to going to 80 pieces. So we hired some more team. We strategized kind of how we could do the pipeline, and from all the way from the writing room to post-production, and be able to get 80 pieces, doubling our capacity. And so we did that, and that's made the biggest impact. And it's also allowed us, you know, one of the things I wasn't thinking about, you know, it was mostly thinking about doing one-off branded content. For a long time, my business was actually making commercials for other brands. I might appear in it, whether it's a Turkish Airlines safety video, and if you're flying from LAX to wherever in Europe on a Turkish Airlines, like you'll see me, at least back then, doing the safety video demonstration magically within like 2.5 minutes. And so that was our bread and butter. We'd do commercials, I'd be in them, we'd be the production company, but we weren't doing a lot of ad slots in our content. And for a long time, you know, when I was 12 years ago making YouTube videos, if you made an ad, you were called like a sellout. It was like this like that has changed. That's completely changed. But I grew up with a little bit of that baggage of like always wondering like, oh, is the audience gonna think I'm selling out? But I love this product. But like, you know, and now I don't even see those comments anywhere. Like, just the language has changed. And I think the dynamic between creator and audience, like their expectations, they understand that you might have a 30-second ad read in the middle of your video, a minute ad read. That's not uncommon now. And so that's the new piece. Once we had 80 pieces going a year, we decided like, okay, let's try out on a few of these, like the ad slot that that our favorite podcasts are doing, that our favorite YouTubers are also doing, and that opened up a different revenue stream that we didn't have before. So that actually, those ad slots are fairly new to us, and it's been fun now for us to figure out, okay, now that we've been doing those for 2 years or a year and a half, getting comfortable with them, how do we like disrupt that? How do we do things that other people aren't doing? Is there different fun formats that we can do that are still hitting all the brand points? Like, I think we can have a lot of fun in that realm, but that again wouldn't have been possible if we weren't upping the amount of content that we're doing. So that's been
but that would be a lot of trust coming from the brand to be able to one up it. Because like, hey, you got to do it this specific way,
right?
But I'm all fascinated. Like, what can you create? Like, I want to see brands to be able to say, okay, here's a creator like Mr. Beast or Zach King, just create and get us views. Like, I would love to see that, because I think you know, there's certain things that brands go after, but I don't think they understand the organic impact that it can have if the creator is like not handcuffed and they're able to create, and they understand the goals of what the brand needs to achieve, but they don't meddle. You know, and I'd love to see that, because I would love to see, you know, juxtaposition in, you know, a spot where you think it's a spot, but it's not a spot, but it is a spot, you know, something like that. Mm-hmm. But like, and this is maybe a question for Ricky, but how many brands are even thinking like this?
Well, I think there's a lot more brands thinking about this, but to truly, you know, it's one of those things where if brands want to be successful in this space, they have to lead with consensus. They have to be empowering the content rather than trying to you know, do something distractive or disruptive. And one thing where I think Zach has a very special talent is he comes up with this beautiful idea and sets expectations on how it's going to work. And so the different times where we've collaborated with you, Zach, it's been a walk in the park, at least from our perspective. Maybe you're just being extra polite, but the truth is, you know, it's one of those things where it's the expectation is up front of what the brand can expect is going to happen, and it's going to happen in a very beautiful way that's consistent with Zach's programming.
Yeah, that's huge, is obviously keeping it. We're looking for brands, and it's funny you mentioned brands that just want to throw you money and say, do whatever. That was actually one of the weird experiences on Vine early days. It was, I think we were seeing a merge of these content creators getting more popular than they ever had, faster than they ever had. At the same time, brand figuring out like, okay, they were just been a couple years on Facebook doing digital spends, and now the influencer was not a word, you know, having an influencer campaign budget was not a thing. But all of a sudden they're throwing us money with no campaign briefs because they weren't developing for us. They were just saying, here's money, here's like, use a Coca-Cola in the video, and what can you do with it? And for us, it was like one of those popular videos we made early on was like, it was soda jetpack. I had soda on my feet, strapped to my legs, and it was like, what if you shook them, filled it with Mentos, and made it look like you were flying based on the thrust that it gave you? So for us, like, I mean, that video got hundreds and hundreds of millions of views throughout all its reposts, and Coke was like super stoked. So, but now you're given a carefully crafted brief, certain KPI that they're looking for, and different talking points, and how it rolls out, and it's all very planned and strategic, which is awesome. I understand that, but there is a balance, and I think there'll be a way as the influencer economy grows and develops, and especially for brands to build trust with the influencers. It's still very young marketplace.
Yeah.
It's almost unpredictable. I would be a little nervous as a brand giving a young creator some money, and you're like, I don't know if they're going to even deliver me back a video. Like, it's just the practices are so new, and but I'm excited.
Let me just kind of iterate one thing on this, because I'm a consumer of Super Bowl ads. I have been since I was 10 years old, and I just love it. I look forward to it every time. But the thought for the last 4 years is, man, that's all they could do? Like, why don't they just give all the money to a YouTuber that actually knows how to entertain, and let's give them the opportunity to entertain?
Yes.
Because I just wasted all my time watching these ads.
If I'm a brand, I'm a big Fortune 500 brand, I'm calling up Jimmy, Mr. Beast, and I'm saying, hey, here's the $10. We're going to buy the $10 million spot for you. You have 30 seconds of ad time. Do what you want. I don't know how we're involved yet for our brand, but like, we want you to take over that 30 seconds. Like, pitch us the idea.
Yeah, and he would literally own the internet.
I think that's cool, but I still think that's a step backwards. And let me
Going
explain
to
myself
broadcast?
on that. Well, when it comes down to is, you can have the impact of a Super Bowl ad every day.
But Ricky, what I want, maybe you're misunderstanding. I want Super Bowl budgets given to people that are actually creative.
Well, no,
That's what I want.
responding to Zach's comment of like having them do a Super Bowl ad. I'm like, well, that's great, but like, I think you can even get more impact, than the actual ad. But because like, what's kind of amazing right now is that there is so much content today, and running, us, managing like the biggest influencer marketing company that's out there. We're probably the biggest by like probably 100% with how much activations that we're doing, working with thousands and thousands of creators, and we're barely penetrating that blue ocean of content, barely. And so it's like one of those things where if companies can become very data driven, they can literally get to the point where they're getting hundreds of millions of views a week. I mean that's what's out there today. And so the thing about like Super Bowl is, I think we're gonna in like 20 years look back and think, okay, that was cute, because
I think the point,
if you watch a Super Bowl ad, how many times do you watch until you're getting tired of it?
Yeah, I think the thing for me was they're getting lazy, number one, and just don't even get me going on it. But it's like, all we need is an A-list celebrity in the ad, and then it makes us relevant.
And then we're golden.
Like that's the most insane thing I've ever heard. But two, what if we gave Zach King $5 million for a 30-second spot? What could he do with that? I'm interested in that, because I can guarantee you it's going to get a heck of a lot more attention and focus, not only in the Super Bowl, but everywhere online, on Reddit, on YouTube, on TikTok, everywhere, if he actually was enabled to $5 million. So, like, Zach, if we brought you $5 million, could you create something cool?
I could rotate LA. Yeah, rotating room.
Well, yeah, if we were giving you like $5 million, you'd probably, over the time period that you're spending it, or whatever you do with it, you could probably have something that has way more views than you could get on the Super Bowl.
But that's my whole point, is I think that and brands, I think, are lazy in some aspects, and I think ad agencies are lazy in some aspects. We don't need to go into particulars, but like, what we want and what a brand wants is people to talk about them, right, in a positive way, and you got that brand awareness and so on and so forth. Well, what's a better way to do it is to give it to a creative agency, having them put all this production in with hundreds of people for $5 million for a 30-second spot, or give Zach King with his department complete control over it, and just have a couple things. We just want really good brand integration and do something creative and have the internet talk about it. I would rather watch that 100% of the time than some of the stuff that we're seeing now, because I think the essence is, is we're at a point where they cannot go toe-to-toe creatively with the most amazing creators that are forced to do that twice a week, every week.
Yeah, because you have a creator doing it, someone that creates content to a community that loves it. You're not getting an advertiser or a copywriter to try to get creative without any data point of reference of how people are going to respond to it. I mean, I agree.
Can you make it happen? Like literally, let's make this a case study. Find him $5 million.
Yep. Ricky,
let's
there's
make
your
it
challenge.
Hey, the future of advertising is entertainment. It's going to be, having content creators creating the content or integrating what you want to do inside what they have already created. I mean, yeah. So no, I think we're all on the same page. That sort of thing is starting to happen. I believe brands starting at the end of next year with the trend that we're seeing with spends are going to get to the point where they're having 100 million plus budgets just for influencer and just for the creator community. It's already going in that direction. This year there's going to be $702 billion spent on media. 13.5 billion will be spent on the creator economy or influencers. We're going to be seeing that shift over because all of this media and what's expensive in media is a small fraction of eyeballs of what is a part of the creator community. And just on YouTube alone, I think it's 85% of the views are creator views. That's bigger than Netflix, Amazon, and all of TV combined. We're going to be seeing this drastic shift, and there's just going to need to be more infrastructure. And brands and advertisers are going to have to change their ways when it comes to expectations and when it comes to control.
Yeah, and I don't know. It'll be interesting. I think there has been a lot of changes over the last few years, and people are moving more in this direction. But
it's more decentralized thinking rather than being a centralized.
Yeah, but I think it's just budgets. Oh yeah, we can do it for less, and we get more of an impact. So let's go there. But my thought is, well, what if we give them a bigger budget? What can they do? I'm just curious. I'd love to see it. And anyway, I said my 2 cents. Get Zach $5 million. Let's make it happen.
No, there's definitely brand leaders out there that are starting to do that, where there's okay, we believe in you. We believe in what you're doing. Let's see what you'll do with this budget. But yeah, it's going to become one of those things where it's going to be a much bigger thing, a much more common thing that brands will be doing.
Well, I truly do believe that the influencer space, if you get the right brand, they could be $1 trillion brand if they're working with 100%. The right influencers.
Yeah.
I do believe it, but it needs to be at a level where they can create that's in line with that brand. And I just seen what, just a small little channel Mr. Beast was able to do. And I'm still blown away. Anytime he says jump, the internet jumps,
So you're right, because I think you could build $1 trillion brand through this community, because there's seriously more content than this world's ever seen before. And it's understanding how to navigate that decentralized content and understand how to monitor and how to prioritize it. But it's more than just trying to do one viral hit, because one-hit wonders are forgotten. And you have to put together a program that's very data-driven. And you got to look at it not as just getting the eyeballs, but truly building a sales channel. When CFOs of Fortune 500 companies really connect the two, that this area of media is really what's going to be cleaning out the shelves in store, retail or e-commerce. Once they build the attribution infrastructure to do that, this whole industry is going to go crazy. But by then, the creators don't even need the money, because they've already realized how to monetize off of their own products or potentially even their own platforms. So it's a fun space to be in. Zach, where do you see it going? I mean, one, where do you think the industry is going? And then two, are there other forms of video that you're passionate about, figuring out, like long form or like live streaming?
Yeah, I'm figuring out how right now, even still years into it, how to program a YouTube channel properly, for us. And that's really where the production pipeline meets the audience, meets all of our time and focuses and passion. as being creators. So right now, we're trying to figure out how to do longer form stuff, and we're at the tipping point. This isn't a brand piece, but figuring out how to actually sponsor our own material. One of our biggest goals, and why I love having a YouTube channel, Instagram, like all these direct publish to the audience, is because we can speak directly with them, we can distribute directly to them, and in a way, seeing different streaming platforms deals come our way for original content, but we're hitting a point where we can actually say, well, we can actually match those budgets self-funded. Why would we even bring the audience to you? Why wouldn't we just do this on our own platforms? And I think we're seeing that world get very, very a tipping point for a lot of creators being able to say, if I can do the production myself and I can pay for it, like, why not own the content too? That's really important for our long tail, our strategy. So
that's
we're figuring that, navigating that out. So we're at a place where we're starting to make longer form stuff. We're still keeping up all the short form stuff. We're catering to a YouTube audience and figuring out, like, diving in again, almost back to filmmaking and teaching, getting other people inspired to create. Like, that's a big goal of ours. And then all the other projects we're tackling, they're kind of side things. That's where we're staying focused. Is we want to do, we've made 3,000 of these short pieces. We basically want to tell little stories around some of the special ones to us, flesh them out into some short films, maybe even some feature films, a lot of other material, and that's where we're heading.
Love it. So another question I have is, a lot of people would look at your content and says, oh, okay, there's a couple people working on it. Like, what does it take for your company to create? Like, how many, you don't have to get into all the particulars, but I think people need to know the vastness of some of these businesses that are content creators. And there's a lot of moving parts, just not what you see just in a 15-second, 30-second, video spot.
Absolutely. There's a whole team behind the scenes that help me. There's 25 of us full-time that work on these things, all the way from the writing room to the actual production. We have the trick engineers, there's art department, props, carpenters, like all of these moving pieces in filmmaking have to come together for the thing to be made. And that's what I love about it. Like, when I watch Jurassic Park as a kid, and even watching The Mandalorian behind the scenes, it's like, it's practical, it's in camera, they're building the dinosaurs. Like, that was so cool to me. Instead of just being green screen and people in morph suits. Like, I love the practicality, the tactileness of filmmaking. And so there's a whole team here. We work together in the warehouse where we craft these things. But, the aesthetic is one that we want people, the audience, to watch and think, maybe it is his wife holding the camera. Maybe it's just him and a tripod. Maybe it's him and a friend or a roommate. Like, that's an aesthetic choice and a tonal choice for us in the work, because we believe the magic is paid off so much better if you feel like it's shot on a phone.
Exactly.
We're really shooting some of these things on Reds and Alexas, sideways, vertically mounted. Like, it's a full-on movie production, but we sometimes want the cameraman or camera gal to trip, because it makes that filmmaking feel like that shot feel real. Like, what would a real person?
Is it more relatable?
Yeah, it's more relatable, and it's that plays a little bit into the trickery. If you watch a feature film or something, big budget thing on Netflix, it's produced. How they're shooting that. There's no curiosity behind. You're not even wondering how is Iron Man flying. Like, you just know it's CGI, it's 3D. You chalk it up to it's a whole $200 million production. But for us, we want you to wonder, like, wait, how is that? Is he really flying? It looks like he's flying. It looks like it's shot on an iPhone 11 too. Like, I don't understand. So that's part of the aspect of making it relatable, more believable, and kind of tricking them a little bit, because most people wouldn't expect that there's a crew behind these things.
So I'm very curious, because you have a pretty decent sized team, a little bit bigger than I thought you would have for the amount of content you put out there. But how many hours do you think you put into the seconds of a video?
Oh, we've never calculated. That would be fascinating, Derral. It's got to be. So each piece usually takes 1 or 2 people a full month or two. So many hours per second. For each piece, it's probably pretty wild.
Yeah, and I think that's an essence, because there are some people will look at a piece of content like, oh, okay, just shot it on the phone, it's so on, and they don't realize that sometimes hundreds of hours with just all the manpower that was put into the production was able to, be showcased this way. And they don't see all the small little details. And I think the more that it looks like authentic and real and it's not disruptive or, oh, he shot this on, with a crane shot or whatever, did this or that. It's just like, no, like he did it on an iPhone 11. I mean, that's actually a little bit more difficult to pull off, and to make that illusion. So
I'm going to ask a random question. Just curious to see, how you respond to this. How would you describe your audience? Like, is there like a persona of people that watch your content and that you'd consider as like loyal, loyalists in your community?
Yeah, and the loyalists on the fan page are filmmakers. They're creatives. They want to make something. They're not necessarily up and coming creators themselves, but they're artists. They, for us, we found there's a big group of filmmakers that watch our stuff, especially our YouTube channel over the years, because we also, in particular, run a couple like monthly film challenges for them where we get thousands of submissions and we feature them. The goal on the YouTube page is really to foster more filmmakers. So we noticed that audience, and then it's in terms of the demo, it's really worldwide. I talk to a lot of creators who will say, "Yeah, I just have a U.S. audience, or I just have a Canadian audience," or it's very specific. But over the years, and this happened right around Vine, is when it turned to a global audience because we realized a lot of countries like the Philippines won't watch Vietnam and China. They don't watch a lot of U.S. content because of the language barrier. But for our work, a lot of times we've crafted these things intentionally so that they don't have language. A lot of my early Vines, I'd say, this is how I do, and I'd introduce with dialogue. We've cut that out. So if it doesn't need dialogue, it's like, if it doesn't have to hinge on that, we completely take it out. We try to play up, almost the Charlie Chaplin or Buster Keaton moments of it, the George Méliès visual comedy and style, because it does appeal to people that don't speak English. So that's been important to us, is figure out like how could anybody watch this and enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Where do you want to be 10 years from now?
10 years is too far. I don't think 10 years, but 5 years, I'd love to be making longer form stuff and be in a place financially where all of our content could be created in-house, could be funded in-house. Maybe even the same team makes it in-house, and we are only reaching to outside resources if we really want that distribution or some other different creative connection. So for us, that's where we're trying to get have a lot of freedoms in terms of the creativity and what we make here.
Well, Zach, thank you so much for your time and for your craft. Like I know Ricky and I get really excited when people are experts at their craft, and I just know that the thought process and the time and energy that you do to entertain and to really push the threshold of what a creator can do on social media. I think it's amazing, and I think that you're building something special, because I think the content itself is like what you said, it can go worldwide, just based off of that. And there's not a lot of content that can do that, and it's just great content, and we really appreciate you jumping on for sure.
Yeah, and Zach, and I say this sincerely, we are witnessing the era of the artist right now. There's more art today, and artists that are able to self-sustain, and I really do see you as one of those innovators that really helped this world of content explode, and I think you're going to be remembered for that. In the next 20, 30, 50, next century. And
so let's just get him the $5 million, Ricky, so that he can create something amazing.
Okay.
Like, let's just make that happen right now.
I have a couple of ideas.
That's awesome. Well, thank you guys for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Well, perfect. Thank you all for watching the Creative Disruption Podcast. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe. You know what to do. And we'll see you on the next one. Thanks, everyone.